Welcome back to the Literacy Lunch Break. I'm your host, Marjorie Bottari, and I am so excited to have Dr. Lori Hernandez here with us today. Dr. Hernandez is the Director of Teaching and Learning in the Newport Mesa School District. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Hernandez.
You're welcome.
So I know quite a bit about Newport Mesa. I was lucky enough to support Newport Mesa with phonemic awareness and bridge to reading. But I would love for you to just share a little background about Newport Mesa with our listeners, because it truly is such a unique district and you are doing amazing work. So I would love, before we jump into the questions, for listeners to just hear a little bit about the district and what makes it so unique.
Sure. We have 22 elementary schools, and we're located in Southern California in Newport Beach and Costa Mesa. And we have, of the 22 schools, 10 are Title I schools, and the other 12 are not. And we're a pre-K to 6 elementary program. And then we have, middle schools and high schools. But my department specifically serves the elementary schools. We are pretty diverse district, a lot of newcomer English learners, a lot of Hispanic English learners, and then a mix of pretty much all, ethnicities you would see in Southern California.
Yeah. And that's, I think, you have a large district, but as you just said, it's really diverse and truly diverse, right? Like, so you have, as you said, some Title I schools, newcomers, English language learners, but then you also have some schools where you have a large population where you maybe don't have English language learners. So I know we've talked before, it's kind of this tale of what seems like two districts, but you've really done a phenomenal job of saying, no, we're one district and we're going to identify what those needs are across all schools and ensure access and equitable teaching and resources for all. So I would love for you to share with our listeners just what that looks like, because we know there really is no one size fits all when we think about the needs, right? We have students and teachers with a variety of backgrounds, needs, lived experiences. So as you look at one district that does have a variety of different needs or experiences, how do you really bring that together and ensure that this equity truly becomes a reality?
I think one of the things is that, of course, if you look at an average of a high performing school and a low performing school, you're going to look okay. So we actually really look at all of our schools as individual schools and look at their growth. So it doesn't matter if you're already at 80 or 90% of your kids are on level on state testing, or if you're still really struggling to get kids reading. Every child needs high quality instruction. Every child needs, and especially when it comes to literacy. So we might make assumptions that say that, just because these kids went to preschool or they come from a certain background, they're already going to be readers in kindergarten. But even those kids need really systematic phonemic awareness and phonics instruction, or we see that come up later in their careers where they're not able to spell, they're not able to attack bigger words. And so over the last 3 years, we've been on a mission for updating our curriculum, getting our teachers trained, and making sure our assessment system is solid for identifying needs, screening, benchmarking, progress monitoring. We have all the elements of that. And so we started about 3.5 years ago, we started what we call our P3 literacy team. So it's a mixed group. It's got administrators, teachers, leaders. And our first step was to look, we have, as many districts across the country have outdated ELA curriculum that wasn't based in systematic phonics. We really liked the high quality text and all of the, comprehension and language instruction in the program. But we did see that in pre-K, TK, kinder, first grade, and second grade, we needed something that was a little bit more systematic, that was more current to the current research on reading and how to teach kids to read. And so we went through a process. We piloted, we ended up adopting, our first step was phonemic awareness, because there's almost no phonemic awareness in our core program. So we first started with the Hegarty Phonemic Awareness flipbooks. We trained all our teachers in it. We made this it was a requirement every day, every classroom, this, 8 to 15 minutes of phonemic awareness a day. We saw immediate gains especially in our Title I schools.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, then obviously naturally phonics is next. We were using a mix of some SIPS instruction, some different programs that we had used for many years to supplement the core, but we actually did a district-wide, very strategic adoption of bridge to reading. So for kinder, first and second now, we did 1 year at a time. So as those kids matriculated up, because you can't train all teachers in 1 minute, So we started with kindergarten. We ended up training everybody in bridge to reading. We sustained, as part of that is the phonemic awareness. And that was a big hit as well. The teachers loved it. Like, I feel like that is one thing that is consistent from, one side of town to the next.
Yeah.
Every child is getting phonemic awareness and phonics. And then the next phase of that was really layering in, assessments and PLCs,
Mm-hmm.
and how do we now use the weekly word check to identify needs in the moment immediately. We're really moving toward not just sending kids out to a reading group with a separate program, but
Mm-hmm.
really, what do they need what did they not get that week? Who needs a reteach of that week's instruction, and being more responsive in an ongoing way so that eventually, we're meeting needs as they come, and we're not ending up with kids that are 20 skills behind. So that's kind of
Right.
the old way, right? We wait till
Yep.
week 16. We say, who's at risk? We put them all in the same group. Doesn't matter their need. Instead of going week by week and saying, okay, we
Mm-hmm.
taught the, short I this week. These 3 little pumpkins aren't getting it. Let's pull them to the
Mm-hmm.
table and do the same approach again and see if with a little bit more practice they can get it. Instead of just seeing it as like kids are behind, or, these are
Right.
struggling kids, right? They're not struggling. They
Mm-hmm.
just missed that sound, or they missed that pattern, or whatever it may be. So I think really, like, kind of the consistent curriculum, a lot of consistency and coherence with that, training our teachers, and then
Mm-hmm.
assessment. Those were the three big things.
Yeah, and those are big things, right? But as you said, you also were really mindful about the way you rolled that up, right? You just said you can't train everybody in a minute. And I think that's the struggle in education, is we know that there's this sense of urgency, but we also have to ensure that we're implementing it well and we're supporting teachers. And again, I'm lucky enough to have worked with you. I know how well you have designed the system of support for educators to really not just say, here's the next new thing, but no, let me help you understand the importance of it, especially as you said, when you do really have a wide range of differences within the district. And, again, there, as you mentioned, there may be some assumptions sometimes of, oh, these kiddos went to preschool, or, oh, they have really great vocabulary and they look at all of their oral language. They're going to pick up reading just like that. They don't really need this phonemic awareness. They don't need this phonics instruction. And when we do that, as you said, you find out later in 3rd and 4th grade, no, they actually did need that explicit instruction because it's not natural. So even if you went to preschool or you were read to, that doesn't mean you're going to learn to decode and encode. So there's multiple pieces as we think about that educator piece of not just preparing them to teach the curriculum or to understand the why, but also to understand why this is impactful, even if maybe we've had some different opinions before. So I would love for you to share about, like, especially if administrators are listening, or coaches, or, even a teacher thinking, I'm being asked to make this change and I really don't feel it's necessary. What are some of those steps that you put in to support that shift? Because it's a big shift for many educators.
Yeah, I think, obviously as a leader, you have to always balance, right? When we mandate
Uh-huh.
things, when we say everyone's going to do this because we said so, and
Uh-huh.
when we more organically get all the buy-in. And you have to have a balance, right? There's sometimes, like with the phonemic awareness, we know how important it was. So we couldn't wait for everyone to buy into the science of reading. We said,
Right.
everyone's going to try this 10-minute a day routine in classrooms. And there were some slow starters, but in general, teachers saw how beneficial it was for their kids right away. So when you see results, it reinforces, like, hey, maybe
Yes.
this is a good thing. We did we did have a lot of buy-in going into it. So that was good. Our administrators
Mhm.
were very supportive. They really saw the benefit right away, but we also did things like walkthroughs with principals to actually look at the instruction, helping them, like we trained them as well. We offered,
Yes.
in addition to just, there's like curriculum. How do I teach this program? How do I do these hand motions? How do I do these, the phonics instruction? But then the other side of it is like, why is it important? So we
Hmm.
also did, we trained people in the letters program from Lexia, right? So it's really just like deep science of reading. It's basically like a college course. We offered that. So we had a version for administrators for them to understand the science of reading. And then we have reading support teachers on our campuses. And oftentimes in districts, at least in my experience in the past, those are some of our newer teachers. They haven't gotten a classroom yet. Maybe it's a part-time position. There's tends to be a lot of turnover. What we've done instead is we've really invested in that position, saying, it's going to take time to flip it where the classroom teacher is equipped and has the time to meet all those small group needs. We know we have a system where we have these reading teachers going in. We need to make sure those people are really highly trained. So they've all been through the letters program. We also open it up to any primary grade classroom teacher that wanted to take it. Also, our specialized academic instructors, which is like our special education teachers, they've also taken it. So we have about 150 teachers that we've put through this extensive 2-year training,
Wow.
which has been then paired with, so now when they're actually teaching phonemic awareness and phonics, they know why. Or when a
Right.
child isn't getting it, they actually know what to do and they can make those professional decisions. We don't want to take away that ability for teachers to make professional decisions, but we want them to be based in the research and the best practice.
Yes.
So it's kind of, and it's not a perfect system. It's never going to be, right? We're dealing with
Mhm.
human beings, but we
Exactly.
are
Yep.
trying to set the conditions. And, there's
Mhm.
turnover. Teachers, like we're facing a time where we had a lot of retirements this year. We're going to have a lot of new teachers. Now we got to get them on board. And so that it's always going to be evolving. But I think that training ongoing, we've also brought out trainers to do demo lessons where we've released those first grade teachers, kindergarten teachers, whatever year we're on. This last year it was second grade. So we've had a demo lesson and then we've released the teachers to sit in the back of the classroom and watch and then debrief with the trainer, ask about
Mhm.
those teacher moves. We did something different this year, which was for second grade. We did the general like core demos, but we also did small group instruction demos to show what
Mhm.
this might look like if you were just pulling a group using the Haggerty materials, but you were using pulling back 5 kids that needed a reteach. How do you teach a little condensed version, do some routines? And so it's been, a multi-pronged approach.
Yes. Yes. And everything that you're saying, I'm listening and I'm like, there's so many layers to it all. The support is not just the educators or the classroom teacher going to letters, right? You're ensuring that the leadership, the administration has this understanding, that
Mhm.
that the support teachers have this understanding.
Mhm.
So it really is, across the system.
Mhm.
So I think right away, just listening to that and, my experience as a teacher or a literacy coach or as a building administrator is that didn't typically happen. And so then you're learning something new and you're understanding this, but then you almost have to fight to do what you learned because maybe somebody else doesn't understand,
Mhm.
and just the inefficiencies in that. So ensuring that everybody has this understanding. And then the next thing you said, which I love because I say it all the time, is we are working with humans, right? So yes, like you
Mhm.
can learn the curriculum, but there are those professional decisions that you're going to have to make because every kid is different, right? There is not a
Mhm.
one size fits all, but you're equipping teachers with the knowledge and the resources and the understanding and the knowledge of the resources to be able, that's how you make those decisions in the moment, right? Is you have both. It's not one or the other. So I think that's so phenomenal. And then the next thing I heard is just, and I just know this from working with you, is just that consistent and deeper and deeper and deeper support, right? Like we're going to start out by showing you how it's implemented. Then we're going to have somebody come model in the classroom for you. Now you've got this. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about what small group looks like. And I think that is something that doesn't typically happen, but is so impactful and so powerful. Um,
It's hard. It takes discipline, right? So
mhm.
in this world of teaching and learning, there's serious across our whole profession, right? There's just fatigue over, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Like, I mean, we've rolled out, science curriculum and math curriculum and done all of these things. It's taken a lot of discipline to say, and we also do literacy, right? That is not going, we're not one and done on that. That's also going to be a priority. And it's hard because there are so many competing priorities that it takes a lot of discipline to say, no, now we're at a point we have to identify every new teacher to K-1-2, make sure they have training, make sure they have ongoing support for what we do, what is our way with phonemic awareness and phonics. And it takes a lot of discipline to do that amongst every other initiative and we're turning our heads constantly in education.
Yeah. I mean, that's so true. And and like you said, that's never going to go away, right? You have the new teachers, you need that new support. And it's just that constant treadmill that you're on, and you're just trying to make sure that you're supporting them the best that you can. So I would love to hear a little bit about those wins, because we're talking about the work that you've done, and you have done so much. So as you think about students, as you think about teachers, administrators, what are some of the wins that you are noticing with this work that you've done? And then, what do you have to continue to dig into?
I think the first win is that people are bought in, right? So the first win is that people understand this approach to reading instruction is the way. We're not getting any resistance to that. Like, we know that phonemic awareness is important. We know phonics is important. I know all the primary teachers, amazing teachers in this district, can talk to you about why phonemic awareness is important and what it even is. And I can't say that 5-10 years ago in this profession, when I was a principal, I can't tell you that the primary grade teachers would be able to really tell you what phonemic awareness is, because it wasn't in the curriculum. It's not something that was emphasized. But with that importance on phonemic awareness, we've seen huge gains. So like right now in kindergarten, our mid-year results, we always look at a couple things. We look at our district overall. Then we look just at the Title I schools and how they're catching up and how they're making growth. So like in 1 year, we went up 7% on the mid-year kinder phonemic awareness measure. So we're at 81% of our kindergartners, are passing in phonemic awareness. So that means they're ready, right? They're ready to learn to read. So and that was not easy, right? But every year we've seen consistent gains with just like layering in different things and layering in different supports. And we're at a point where we're not giving up. And even though like 80 was kind of our marker of like, we want 80%, right? Because we know statistically there are some kids that are going to be late bloomers with reading. That's just the world, right? That's just how these little brains work. So we're okay with that, but that doesn't mean we're giving up on them. Right. Like, so we say like, so phoneme segmentation fluency, right? Super important, super big indicator. We don't give up, even though in our assessment that was previously, kind of only assessed until the beginning of kindergarten. We are not giving up until a child can segment phonemes. Like, that will continue for you. Like, we're never giving up. We're never saying that 80% is enough. Those 20% of kids are going to get some work. These kindergartners we've identified at the end of the year that aren't quite there, they're going to continue to get phonemic awareness support until they have it. And then we're going to need to catch up some phonics that they weren't ready for. So it's a continuous cycle of improvement. And so we're at a point where like mid-year first grade, our decoding, so we assess decoding with nonsense words, and we improved by 16% last year. So we're up to like mid-year first grade this year, 66% of our kids in Title I schools were decoding nonsense words. So we're on track, right? We know sometimes, kids bloom a little later, English learners bloom a little later sometimes, and we need to give kids time to develop before we just label them, right?
Right.
We've also really invested in transitional kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. We have a great early learning department. And one of the things we've done is TK, transitional kindergarten, is now like a thing in our state. I think, every state's on their own path with transitional kindergarten. It's now become, our 13th grade in California. So this year, we'll be at full implementation. They did it a few months at a time. So now we're going to have kids that are entering our system for transitional kindergarten, full day program, full school, same kind of program as kindergarten. And they could actually be 3 years old when they enter our system.
Wow.
So because we start school at the, end of August, and, there could be kids that are not turning 4 until September. And So it's, or till the end of
Wow.
August, right? We're going
Yeah.
to have those like last babies, like your birthday's August
Mhm.
30th. You might be 3 when you
You're
enter transitional kindergarten.
yeah.
So that's been a shift, right? We've had to really,
Definitely.
we used to have a system where a lot of, and a lot of, I think a lot of places have this, where it's like a TKK combo class. Like you just throw those TK kids in because you don't have enough kids to make a whole class. Well, now we actually have it as a whole grade. So there's no combo classes for TKK anymore. So TK has become this beautiful, developmentally appropriate environment for kids to develop. But what we've
Amazing.
done is we've also done phonemic awareness heavy
Mhm.
in TK. So they're using the flip book, they're doing daily phonemic awareness. And so we've gotten to a point where we have, so we measure kids like on their entry to kindergarten. We don't do a lot of real, like we have different measurements, different kinds of indicators in TK. But when they enter kinder, we can assess them, we can screen them in and know if they're ready for kindergarten, right? So 85% of students who had our TK program were proficient in first sound fluency entering kindergarten.
Oh,
85%.
wow. That
And
is amazing.
isn't that crazy, right? So it's like, wow, a year of some really good developmental, play-based learning, along with some really intentional, strategic phonemic awareness instruction. We compare that to 63% who did not. So people could say, oh, you have a lot of kids that went to other preschool programs and all that. So we measured our kids who attended our TK program against our kids who did not. So we don't know what they did, right? Maybe some of them went to preschool, went to private TK, but 63%, did not enter ready. But compared to 85% of students entering
Wow.
kindergarten from our TK program. So we're really proud of that. I mean, they've
Yes,
done a great job,
absolutely.
but part of that has been, right? What is TK? No, we're not teaching phonics. We're not having them read and write in TK. We're not making that an academic kindergarten environment for TK.
Right.
We're letting them play in the little store and play
Mhm.
with all the kitchen stuff and develop
Right.
language. But at the same time,
Exactly.
every single day, they're going to get 12 minutes of phonemic awareness instruction and
Right.
word games, right?
Right.
They're going to rhyme, they're going to sing, they're going to do all those phonemic awareness, really important phonemic awareness games that will make the difference, especially for kids in Title I schools.
Yeah, and that's fun. I love what you're saying. It's playing with language, and the most important thing is to have them in those centers, play with the kitchen, build your oral language, and then yes, we get to play some games and you're going to learn that this language you're hearing is made up of parts and we can change parts to make new words. That's what's so exciting about it. Um I also just love that you said, and I know we have to wrap up soon, but I do just want to call out that you said, we're not giving up on kiddos. So, okay, great. Typically, you're supposed to have phoneme segmentation at this point, but you don't. So, no, we're not going to stop teaching it and we're not going to stop assessing it, right? So, it's not, and you also said we're not going to jump to that label, but it's also not just wait and see, because there's a big difference, right? There are some students that just like, especially as you said, English language learners that need some more time with the language and they just need more practice and application. That doesn't require a label, but it also doesn't require the, oh, they'll get it eventually. Because there's a big difference. And I love that when you said that, no, we're not labeling them, but we're supporting them, we're assessing, and we're making informed decisions. And I think that is so critical because we know the importance of building these foundational skills early on for our students. And so, oftentimes I'll hear like, that's not developmentally appropriate, or, they're not supposed to be, doing this in kindergarten and first grade. And I'm always like, so show me the research that says it's not developmentally appropriate, because it's important. But we do honor the fact that some students will need more repetition and practice. And so that's where we have to support that. And it can be fun and it can be engaging. And that's so important to understand. We do have to wrap up because we like to keep these short, and I know you are very busy, but I am going to ask just one more question. If we have some listeners, listening to this and hearing about, just the transitions and the support and the impact that you've made over the last, you said, 3.5 years, and they just needed a starting point, or just one piece of like one little nugget you want them to walk away with to say, just to get you started, whether it's a mindset shift or, a practice or a system to put in place to really help with this transition and moving the needle to make these changes.
I think you can't teach kids to read unless you believe that all kids can learn to read.
Oh my goodness,
So
I love that.
I just think, it is like, as the saying goes, like it's rocket science, right? Everybody's talking about teaching reading is so complex. We have to believe that our teachers can do it. Like I don't do it. I sit in an office, right? I'm not a teacher anymore. I did teach some kids to read, but we have to have every teacher believing they can do it and not giving up until they do it. So like seeking out, maybe your district isn't providing the best training, right? Go on like exactly this, right? There's podcasts. There's so many videos online of how to teach phonemic awareness. So it's like, so you don't have a curriculum, but you know what they need as far as phonemic awareness. It follows a progression. So every curriculum is going to follow that pretty much similar progression. We know how kids learn to read now. So it's like the teacher has to believe that however many kids you have in your class, that you can actually teach them to read and you're not going to give up until they do. So that for me is like that mindset shift of like, we don't give up on any child. I've seen classes where, because people will say like, oh, they came into me, they were, quote unquote, my least favorite phrase in education. Like I have a low class. I got these low kids. Right. Like, so that for me is like, as my teenagers will say, like cringe. Right. So so I've seen teachers that get a class that would be labeled that way, right? The kids come in and maybe they're missing a lot of skills, even in second and third grade. And one teacher can completely flip that on its side and bring them all up, right? Because it's complex. You've got to love them. You've got to have a relationship with them. I know there's discipline and there's, kids are different since the pandemic. I'm not denying any of that, right? But as a teacher, you got to know that you got to put your head on your pillow every night knowing you did everything you could to get those kids reading, because that is truly the path to their life. Like if we don't teach, we know what happens to kids if they don't learn to read. Right. This is like, not to say the other subjects aren't important, but teaching them to read has to be the most important goal we have in our elementary schools.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. And it is that sometimes we don't even recognize the language that we use that then impacts, what we believe or what we do. So I love that. That was a perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for all that you do. I have loved, getting to watch your district from the very beginning and moving to where they are now. And it's just been, I talk about Newport Mesa all the time just because I've seen the work that you put in. I've seen the success. I've seen the growth, and it's just so wonderful. So thank you again for being a guest, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we explore literacy topics in a snack-sized, easily digestible format.